Since the release of Tears of the Kingdom, I've seen most avid Zelda fans saying that with all the new locations, quality of life changes, new abilities, and just stuff to do, Tears of the Kingdom is just so incredibly dense and provides such a vastly improved gaming experience that it can kind of make Breath of the Wild look like a tech demo sometimes. I mean, seriously, look at the differences here. It's insane that this thing even runs on Switch. However, as I've been journeying through this new rendition of 2016's Hyrule, I found that a part of me is actually wanting to go back to Breath of the Wild for some reason, and I think it's because of one reason in particular, but it's probably not what you think. Whereas some people don't want to go back to the seemingly empty Breath of the Wild, I do, as this feeling of empty sound spaces is something I actually love, and I may be alone in this, but I'm willing to bet that I'm not. I've spent a lot of time pondering why exactly I feel this way, and even more time figuring out how to put it into words, because I absolutely adore both of these games, even if I'm only about 25 hours into Tears of the Kingdom. But as I play more and more, I find myself missing one of the things that made me fall in love with Breath of the Wild in the first place, and that being the differences in how these games use space and sound as immersion through the world. This is a video attempting to put into words the often wordless and abstract reasons why, despite how impressive Tears of the Kingdom is, I still love Breath of the Wild more. And for myself and those of you playing Tears of the Kingdom now, I hope to inspire ways for all of us to make our journey and time in this special game even more enjoyable. Cue the music. So before we get into the specifics, I want to say that I 100% do think that Tears of the Kingdom is a better game in literally every aspect. I mean, that's pretty hard to deny. From the new abilities that change the way you see literally every puzzle and interaction, to the vastly more dense world of Hyrule that is so much easier to get lost and sidetracked in, it's clearly a huge improvement from a gameplay perspective. I also want to give my brief history with both of these games because I actually only recently finished Breath of the Wild for the first time ever in preparation for Tears of the Kingdom. I never picked up the game initially for a few reasons, one being I didn't have a Switch at the time, but the other being that it just didn't interest me. Not only had I never played a Zelda game before, but back in 2016 my gaming tastes were different. I enjoyed shooters and fast-paced online games with friends much more than open-world, story-centric games, but now that's pretty much swapped, as I almost exclusively play single-player story games or RPGs or any other variety, and the only shooter I play is Destiny 2 on occasion, unfortunately for me. So when I finally began Breath of the Wild a few months ago and was met with this opening, it immediately gripped me. In just these first few moments in Hyrule, I was awed by the massive scale and detail of the land before me and wanted to explore it all. And throughout my 40-hour or so playthrough, I did just that, and still left so many areas uncharted. I understood why people loved this game even by just stepping into it just a little bit. Not since Cyberpunk in 2020 and Elden Ring last year had I felt so immersed in a game, due in part to the subtle touches in detail and characters and lore and locations, and the simple yet effective model of player-driven exploration where thinking, ooh, that looks interesting, let me go see what it is, keeps you playing long into the night. But even if all of that was taken away, there was one thing that immediately sparked my love for the game. Not the world, the combat, I mean, definitely not, or even the heartfelt story and characters, but instead an aspect that I'd argue is just as important as the exploration itself, and that is what the world sounds like. Sound design has always been one of the biggest factors for my personal love of video games. I don't only mean in big moments and epic battles, though those are definitely important and get me very excited, but more so in the quiet moments where you can truly take in the world you're looking at. This is a design choice I'm calling empty sound spaces, and is where a space in-game isn't one devoid of noise entirely, but rather is one that provides you with the moment to pause and to almost feel, through the sound design, what it would be like to simply exist in the world. It's why Death Stranding quickly became one of my all-time favorite games, despite its repetitive nature, and part of why games like God of War and Outer Wilds will forever be ingrained in my memory, and why Breath of the Wild gripped me so instantly. The sound design in this game is just so perfectly implemented in both the sound effects themselves and the intentional usage of sound design in the world, the environments, and everything that just makes it feel so alive. And because of the nature of Tears of the Kingdom, it's something that both games have overall in common. From the jingles to environmental effects to the repeated sounds of combat like the flurry rush, To shrine themes and the little sound that plays when you open chests, this world is not just overflowing with sounds, but more importantly, sounds that you actually remember. I kid you not, okay? The other day, I saw someone opening a box, and in my head, the sound that plays in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild when you open a chest played, and I thought to myself, man, I've been playing too much of this game. In Breath of the Wild, something as simple as the sound of wind sweeping through grass and a few piano notes playing as I would stop to take in every new piece of scenery became the most calming experience. The repeated sound of Link's shield and weapons clanking in sync with his every other step became almost addicting, and I would sometimes just walk a little extra to my destination to hear it for a moment longer. And that feeling of faintly hearing stable music drift over a hillside, promising a refuge after an intense battle or monsoon, is one I have rarely felt or experienced in a video game. This effect is really strengthened by the way Breath of the Wild's exploration is designed, but is one of the biggest reasons I feel like Tears of the Kingdom doesn't quite have that same effect. If you've played these games before, you're going to resonate a lot with what I'm about to say, and if you haven't, I think this is a perfect example of how these games differ in their exploration. Okay, so in Breath of the Wild, 99% of the time, and the dialogue in my head while exploring would sound like this. Ah, yes, I see an enemy camp in the distance and a shrine nearby. I shall walk gracefully through these fields, picking up flowers and apples along my way until I reach my destination. And on these walks, I would often hear something of interest before I saw it, such as a monster attacking a nearby villager obscured by some trees, or the sound of a stable I didn't know was there but now do because of the faint melody. In Tears of the Kingdom, however, exploration and the dialogue in my head while exploring sounds a bit more like this. Alright, this person just told me to go find this shrine on this aisle. Okay, we're gonna go there. Oh man, now I can see all these places from up top in the aisles. Man, I can go to that shrine over there. I also need to go explore the depths to get some more Zonite. Oh, there's a cave. I can go explore that real quick. And before I know it, it's been like 3 hours, and I have not made any progress toward whatever my original goal was. So that's a bit how exploration functions differently in both games, and part of that is obviously the amount of things that are in both games. But part of that is the sound design and how it draws you in to sit in the moments rather than go looking for a million other things. Now, all of this is not to say that this intentional sound design is not present in Tears of the Kingdom, because it certainly is, if only because the majority of these environmental sounds from Breath of the Wild are found here again, but those are now forced to fit in this transformed Hyrule. That instance of hearing stable music, for example, is something I've really only experienced once or twice at this point in Tears of the Kingdom, owing not only to the fact that there are just so many more locations to explore, but primarily because when I have come across a stable, it hasn't been after a long trek on foot, but instead after a breathtaking trek through the Sky Isles. The Sky Isles are my favorite part of Tears of the Kingdom, but I think it's also one of the reasons that this serene soaking in of the environment exists way less than in the previous game. When I'm in any of the Sky Isles, I can literally see almost any part of the world, and when you take the leap down or shoot upward through a skyward tower, it gives you a perfect view of all the things you can explore. This, of course, makes pinpointing all the new locations and such a lot easier, and I think is certainly a necessity of this game, as without it, exploration would have had a bit less freedom to it. But at the same time, I found it takes away from many of those turn the corner and find something new moments I would have in Breath of the Wild. What takes away from this even more is the building abilities that Link now has. Don't get me wrong, I have been having an absolute blast experimenting with building Zonai devices and having them fall off cliffs when I build them wrong, but when the game presents me with an option of walking on foot, or riding a horse, or flying a freaking plane I built, I think I know which one I'm gonna take. The sense of freedom is at play in Tears of the Kingdom infinitely more than it was in Breath of the Wild, but I found that all these new options and the ability to see much of the world all before you from the sky has really taken away from both the unknown nature of exploration and those quiet moments I loved. Again though, I really love exploring the Sky Isles as they do have their own sense of serenity. Moments like when the sunrise peeks through the early morning clouds and you're able to not only see it wash over Hyrule as a new day dawns, but hear the wind moving the ancient Zonai grass at your feet, carrying sounds of birds and monsters alike. It's truly in these isles that Tears of the Kingdom captures part of that empty sound space I adored in Breath of the Wild, where the sound design and world before you come together in such a perfect harmony that if you closed your eyes, you would feel as if you were in Hyrule. And it's these moments that Breath of the Wild was full of due to the grounded nature of exploration, and Tears of the Kingdom has vastly less of, partially due to its Sky Isles and the nature of that exploration, but it still can be found. So if you're like me and you felt this strange lacking feeling despite all of Tears of the Kingdom's new additions and really want to experience that again, I think that you certainly can. But it may take a little more intentionality. For example, what if instead of using the Skyview Towers for exploration, which the game actively encourages because, yeah, they make exploration a heck of a lot easier, you sometimes instead decided to just mark that distant hieroglyph or ruins on your map and simply travel there on the best machine there is, your own 2 legs, or your horse's 4. Sure, it may take you twice as long to get there, and it's kind of inconvenient, but isn't that the point? Part of the joy of Breath of the Wild was not just in the destinations we set in mind to go, but the journeys we took to get there. Without so many locations to get distracted and enamored by, like we have in Tears of the Kingdom, I would sometimes just walk around the world of Hyrule just for the sake of taking it in. If there was a mountain or river between me and my destination and I could fast travel to it, instead, more often than not, I would just make the trek on foot just to live in the world a little longer. So, as I've been writing this video and playing Tears alongside it, I've been trying my best to do just that, to recapture that sense of moving through the world, breathing it all in each step of the way. And honestly, it's been really hard. This new Hyrule has just so much to do that I want to travel from Shrine to Skyview Tower to unlock that new destination, to explore a new area, to quickly travel to the other side of the map, to just go grab more Zonite for my stupid mech machines. And I'm not saying that this is a bad way to play it, of course. It's perfectly valid because that's how this game is ultimately designed. But it's also designed with freedom in mind. And if you wish to fully recapture that sense of beautiful, empty yet not so empty space of Breath of the Wild in Tears of the Kingdom, I think that every so often, choosing to slow down and take this more methodical route every once in a while will make your time with the game that much better. Perhaps you'll find something new you wouldn't have on your journey otherwise. Because remember, you can't go it alone.